last minute.
I should probably add solar in the HDC.
Oh.
Want to keep going?
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
You know, lead with that.
Yeah.
We can, yeah. HDC. Okay,
For number 10, just in case we have time.
right. So let's go ahead and we'll hit record if everybody's okay with that, and we'll call the meeting to order then.
We just did it.
Okay, so call the meeting to order. Meeting minutes from last month. Can we get somebody to?
I will just offer and Emma, and I'm sorry, you have to, Jilly, you can correct me on this, but I thought it'd be good to have the high school students' last names. Because
Yes.
they weren't on there, so I think Katie Bell's last name is Buchan, is that Buchan? Buchan?
Buchanan, I think.
Oh, Buchanan. And then Rena is Eberhart.
Raina Aber. Yeah.
It's a cool last name.
I thought because I did the notes last month, I thought Raina did not give, we asked her twice what her name was, but she never gave her last name.
And I think Katie Bell is just her first name. So I don't think we got last names of either one of them.
Okay.
So I was just kind of deciphering off of
Okay.
emails they gave me,
Yeah.
but I would default to
Okay.
their classmates.
Spells might be Buchan. Buchan,
Okay.
I think.
I can.
And Raina's is everywhere.
And did
okay.
I not have on Kate? I just had put in Katie.
Katie Bell. You wrote Katie Bell, but that's her.
That's
So that I was
Tracking.
just, yeah.
okay, perfect. So we've got those updates.
Sounds good.
Anyone else have any updates from the minutes last month? Okay, so if
That-
we make those updates, can I get a motion to?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a
accept
second?
the meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, Steve second. Okay, let's move on. So we
I
had,
say aye to them.
okay, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All those in favor?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is welcome Eco Club members. So Josh, you want to do a quick, you did a wonderful thank you intro last meeting. Or was it Kate? Did you do that for the Eco Club members? One of
That
these,
was Kate.
I think you did, just,
I did.
yeah, quick overview of, and you did such a wonderful job because I went back and listened to the
Or
recording.
Was it Jess who went and spoke at the club just prior?
Maybe.
I was late at the last meeting, so I know.
Yeah, I think so. Do one or the other want to kind of do a quick, are you guys pretty familiar with what we do here and the committee and?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
we've heard from Katie and Raina.
okay.
And one of our other friends
Yeah.
has come, Evie Douglas has come quite often.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and we've come on Zoom a couple of times.
Yeah.
but it-
Okay. So it's not your first I mean, you've got some exposure here. Okay. Yeah, please.
Since she's not gonna say, one thing I ask my grandkids is I say, between 1 and 3 or 0 and 3, how many questions would you like me to ask you? How many would you like me to ask you? 2? All right, first question. What is your relationship to sustainability? How did you get there?
I've grown up outdoors my whole life. My parents were really great about making sure that like every day we did something outside. And on the weekends we would go hiking, camping, swimming, biking, literally everything. And once I got to high school, I joined the Eco Club and have really found a passion for leadership within sustainability and how those two can be related. So
Love it. And how have you seen yourself and other young people take leadership positions? Anything come to mind? That's your second question.
seeing people at school take leadership positions within their clubs and organizations has been really inspirational. And then last month or earlier this month, Emma and I, and then Evie and our other friend Gabe went to YCLA Youth Leaders Climate Conference in Vermont. And we spent 3 days with other kids who run climate clubs at their schools. And we worked on projects and did a lot of conversation with them. So that was also really inspiring.
Was that during the school week or over a weekend?
We took Friday off and then we were there Friday, Saturday, or
I-
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
I approve of that.
0 to 4.
I kind of like two also.
Two. Um, When you think of sustainability, what's the main area that you feel grabs your interest, passion, where you want to get involved in terms of that big picture? What grabs you?
The latest version.
Something that I've been thinking about recently a lot is just like overconsumption, I think. And just like not buying things we don't need, or like, I don't know, using more than we need just because we can. So I think that's something I've been thinking about recently a lot.
And the last question, in your life, there's probably a lot of things that have come at you. What is anything that comes to mind that actually has inspired you to be a person of leadership and of service in terms of sustainability?
I've been a camp counselor for a few years now, with like elementary school kids, and it's a nature camp that I've just loved. And I think that's taught me a lot of leadership skills. So I started out as like a counselor in training and really didn't know what I was doing. That's something that's definitely been inspiring, and like maybe want to keep like being a leader within sustainability, because I want to make sure that those kids like can continue to be outside and enjoy it as much as me.
No, thanks. I appreciate your answering. I want to make sure that I have EMMA, and is it Julie, JULIAN?
JILLIAN.
JILL. Didn't say it. Thank you.
And I just realized, I thank you, Bert, for doing that. I just realized what I copied up on the board, I think was last month. I printed out last month's agenda. All right, we're getting off it.
Oh, boy.
Community engagement. Okay, thank you, Bert. All right, so let's run through this. So,
While you're doing that, can I ask another question to somebody?
sure.
Who would like to answer a question? Give me a number. Okay, Kate, you were said you would have. Kate, what is something that you've done today that has given you joy?
I actually, this morning I got up and went to vigil at 8 o'clock in Market Square with Will Arvelo from Crossroads House for the homeless. Because today is Homeless Day of Remembrance. And today's the last day. He's been doing a vigil every Thursday morning since August, where he goes from 8 to 9 a.m. and sits in Market Square to bring attention to our unhoused population on the seacoast. And so I went this morning, and in the very, very cold, hung out with a group of people so we could all think about all the people who are unhoused and cold. And it's 28 degrees outside in the morning. And I actually enjoyed being there in community with them. So
My daughter was on the way over there at 5 o'clock because they have that every year as the national, and they're doing it again at 5. Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
great. I didn't know about the morning one.
Excellent. Okay, let's jump down to community engagement update. Is there an update for community engagement? I know Effie's not here.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can say we're starting to work on the sustainability fair. I think I already reported this last month that Max, our arborist, is on board with giving out trees. I just need to connect with Christy Bryant at the library and figure out when that will be. This might also be sort of a lateral thing, but I don't know how many of you saw this, but I received an email about the Seacoast Environmental Film Festival, which is scheduled for March 23rd, which is a Saturday. So just so you're all aware, and we'll obviously plan around that. But I
Okay,
can't, I
and the
can't
tr-
really speak to Bright Action or any of those things because I'm
Okay.
not so engaged with that stuff.
The trees and Max, is that something similar to what city did with the state this past spring?
Yes, but I think the caliber of tree will be a lot smaller. I know the trees they gave away this year were pretty significant, but I think they're gonna be more sapling size this year, but he
Oh.
went to the state nursery already and
Yeah.
picked out a whole bunch and coordinated with them, so it'll be a similar program.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because they do 400, they gave 200 away and then 200 the city planted. This past year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
400 trees.
Yeah, that's excellent. And on it, do I remember correctly, Kate, did you send an email out about January 11th
This.
community
Portsmouth
discussion?
Listens. Yep.
Yeah, Portsmouth Listens.
Yeah, was it Bill that wanted us?
So you can, I have it printed up too.
I forgot to print it out, but, so they're sort of having a first of maybe many, community dialogues on housing in Portsmouth and in the Seacoast, with Portsmouth Listens, which is a community group that does a lot of outreach, and, our housing navigator in the planning department, Howard Snyder, is gonna be, helping to lead that. I'm not sure all of what it entails, but if you are interested in it and you go to the dialogue session, I think they're gonna start doing monthly work groups. So you can join a study group.
There will be 4 facilitated discussions with a discussion guide. And it's still information. The Portsmouth Listens has done many dialogues over the year, and it's going through a transition. And Robin LeBanc is now heading it up. And there will be about, I think, 3, 4, or 5 facilitators. And if you come to the group, there will be groups during the week, and there will be one on the weekend, and there'll be one on Zoom. So the essence is, how do we really give the city, this is my take, it's still information, how do we really give the city a reflection of what the community would envision a healthy home living situation for the total population? Talk about homeless, or we talk about the aging population. I think if the current trends, we will be a senior community without younger people living in it. And so the dialogue is, how do we, and it's particularly pertinent to this committee, and I think to the economic development of the city, how do we make a city that has an inclusive availability of homes for all people? And so I think that's what the dialogue's about, and looking at the dimensions, where do we have leverage and where do we don't? Does that kind of jive with what you're?
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions on that? Yeah.
In terms of community engagement, again, just to keep this, it's information, but Portsmouth Climate Action is seeing itself as connected to this committee and to the city as a nonprofit public engagement entity. And we had an establishment last year of many things. Just talked about the sustainability fair. Well, there was other dialogues. So we are now in the process of defining what dialogues. We'd like to have five dialogues in 2024. That's the kind of where we're going. We already have one that we did on mobility, which will fit in with the climate action plan. So we're trying to see how we can get topics. After the plan comes out, there'll be 5 sections. So we'll try to look at the sections and see how each of the dialogues might connect to one of those sections, and then really put some public engagement behind the solutions that are being promoted in the CAP. Because when the CAP is formed, nothing happens unless we get the support. So that's kind of the big picture that we talked about a little bit last night, or at least that's what I'm forming
Okay.
in my head. Does that resonate with the others?
I have one question before we move on here.
Yeah.
In the community engagement was mention of made of Effie's notes. Is there a kind of an overall context for that topic that wasn't addressed? We had some great content here. But I guess I'm asking the question of, is there a context here that was not explicitly addressed?
I can answer that, I think.
Yeah.
Whenever Portsmouth Climate Action has been giving community engagement reports, and I think that nomenclature, community engagement, just stuck, and we usually give a Portsmouth Climate Action group.
Sounds like you just did that.
Yeah, that's what we just did.
Great.
And that's, we're in our, just for, it's amazing, the city sponsored Caring for the Future course. And out of that, the course, and then we are now at our 107th meeting consecutively, pretty much. So for the last 2 years, that's kind of where this is coming.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I've got two other, but please, you go.
No, I just have one quick question. The Environmental Film Fest, is it in Kittery again this year?
I believe so, yeah.
Two other engagement topics. First one is community power. Everybody's aware that that's been going, I would say, very successfully. The Portsmouth power, why can't I think of it right now? Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee is going to be looking at in 2024 is how do we move the needle to more green energy? So about 95%, I think it is exactly 95% of those that have signed up for Portsmouth Community Power have chosen the lowest package, which is called Basic. And then above that is Granite Plus, and then Clean 50 and Clean 100. And so we have 5% have gone above the Basic. And so from a community engagement,
80% of that is probably in this room.
yeah, exactly, right. So from an engagement perspective, education, the committee is going to be looking at in 2024, how do we move the needle? And so something will be coming out of that. The committee is still looking at what are the setting goals for 2024. We had a meeting last night and actually talked about putting a multi-year plan in place so that we set goals, say 3 years out. And so we've got, near-term goals, which may be interim goals in 2024 that set a foundation, create a foundation for the out years. But more to come on that. Yes.
I'd like to make a point. Emma and Julia, you talked about leadership. I want to point out what I'm still learning about leadership is something that the default position. Are you familiar with community power and what happened with the city?
Not exactly.
I think, let me give them a elevator pitch of what community power is and what we did.
Yeah, so here, this is the really short version of it. So historically, if you lived here in Portsmouth, you purchased your power from Eversource. And Eversource provided distribution. They delivered the power that you purchased to their house. Those are two different things that they bill for. One is the power and the other is the delivery of it. There was a nonprofit coalition that formed in the state of New Hampshire, And the objective is to go out and buy power on the open market and buy it for and sell it for less, because they're not for profit, sell it for less than, say, Eversource sells it to us here. Also, to give the residents of Portsmouth options to go all the way up to 100% green energy. And so that has been implemented here in Portsmouth. It is starting to happen throughout the entire state, which is wonderful, because you can get cheaper power, or you can get, 100% green power, but cheaper than you could from Eversource. And so that's community power. We've implemented it here, and you still get the same bill every month. You're just buying your electricity from somebody else. Does that make sense? Yeah. So at the end of the day, where the hope is that it's, you save people some money, but the real benefit is more green power.
So here's where I want to point out a leadership opportunity and a decision that makes a difference. I kind of wanted to go to green power. I've lived here for many years, but it was too complicated. As soon as this came on, I was able to go and get my power from community power. And here is the leadership decision. The buy-in rate, if I would have done nothing, I would have just bought in at the normal rate of green power. But I went off site and I did all the little manipulation. I bought in at 100%. There are some communities that had the initial buy-in rate at 100% or close to it. And the default, you had to default out of it to go to less green. So that's a leadership and a strategic situation. You might have gotten more feed. So anyway, I know you guys have talked about that, and there's reasons for both ways, but that's the kind of thing that there's no real quick, easy answer about it. But I thought, and the reason that we talk about it here is we want to accelerate and scale the change to a sustainable future, climate safe future. And this is the big tool was, will this get us there? Now within that, are we got a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bert, I mean, you bring up a great point too, because what you're saying too bleeds into everything we do on the community engagement side. There's a stick and carrot, and how do we bring people on board and not turn them off or turn them away?
Yeah. I wanted to add to this because part of the decision making when we were trying to decide what our default would be was we were in a position where power rates were incredibly high, we're at historic highs. And so we were trying to figure out what to do that we wouldn't hurt residents, because what happens is 90 to 95% of your residents don't even know that they have community power. I mean, like, they just aren't paying attention, that they don't realize that they've switched their power supplier. So you don't want to opt them in to a really high level and have their rate go up, and have an elderly person who doesn't even know that they're on community power suddenly have a spike in their electric bill and have troubles making their bills for the month. And so you have to think about kind of that whole population. You have to try not to do damage, but at the same time, you do want to shift up. And so I thought it was really interesting when we found that the communities who had their default at a higher power level had a higher percentage of opt-outs. But it was still only, 5 to 10% of opt-outs. Whereas we had hardly anybody opt out of community power. And then I wanted to add one more thing about community power that I think is really a vital piece. By being part of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire and having our own power supply, Portsmouth Community Power, we get to bank the profits. And And the reason that's so important is that we can use that money to fund so many sustainable projects down the road. And we just have to be really careful. The city governance is set up right now that the committee, Energy Advisory Committee kind of is controlling that discussion. And we have to be really careful that we have the right governance structure in place so that we're using those funds for sustainability measures. So right now, I think we're in a safe place.
And I appreciate Kate, the kind of getting the subtlety of this. And then if we accumulate that money, we have the option maybe down the road to build our own solar field or to compensate and say anybody under this level of economic income, you can go 100% and we have a fund to help. So it just,
So many options.
I taught first grade. I don't know, I ever even wanted to start thinking about this stuff, but this is what's being demanded today. It's everything has this subtlety and complexity.
Yeah.
And
2 questions. How does the city make a profit?
Well, it's just the money that comes in from the electric rate. There's always a built-in cushion a little bit between what the rate that's set and what it costs. And there always will be because of unforeseen circumstances in any corporate environment. So the Community Power Coalition, even though it's a conglomeration of communities buying power, still has to build in that cushion over time. So over time, you're going to build reserves. We're building reserves right now, and the reserves, what they're doing is they're helping to make sure the organization is stable, and we don't have to worry about hitting a point where we can't pay staff or something because the rate went too low. So there's always a little bit of a cushion to build those reserves. Over time, the coalition will have enough reserves to provide power for a long enough period of time, should the rate go really high, that they will be able to return reserves to communities. So, right, exactly. But those reserves, even though they're held currently for the Power Coalition in general, they're held individually by communities. So we have a set of reserves that are Portsmouth reserves. Currently, those are to fund the whole entity, but over time, they won't need all that money and it'll be returned to us. So, so it's basically they have this
Okay.
cushion for a period of time.
Got it.
Yeah, they need to be able to provide power supply, I think, for a year to all their communities and have a cushion to do that. Should something happen, like there be another crisis and the rates go through the roof and they want to moderate the cost and.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the reserve target's 120 days and we have just recently hit 30 days.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take a little while to hit the 128 days.
How
And then,
many months to get to 30?
We've been operating for 9 months now. We have been operating, but the coalition.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coalition's been operating for about 9 months.
yeah, so I think
March
it's,
of last year.
I think it's the coalition that has hit the 30-day mark.
Yeah.
And they were up and running before we joined them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we launched in June.
Okay,
Yeah.
So they launched March, April, early April.
okay.
Like the first
So-
communities went on.
So
Right.
based on that 120-day, 30-day, you start doing the math.
Yeah.
You can see, I mean, we got another, 2 years to go or something to hit
Yeah.
that 100, potentially.
Mhm.
To hit that 120-day.
And it's not like a 1-for-1. You can't say, oh, it's gonna take, it's taken this long, so it's gonna take, because there's so many other communities that are opting in. And as more communities opt in, it takes a little bit longer to build those reserves. But we want more communities to opt in because it increases our buying power. We become a bigger entity.
And another reason for doing that 120-day reserve is that once we hit that, we can get a credit rating. And that credit rating is actually very useful when we go out onto the open market.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
New Hampshire Community Power goes on the open market. If you have a credit rating, you can get better rates. they take you a little more seriously, I think.
Gotcha. So
What-
my question for you
yeah,
is in round numbers. Very simple answer. What's the delta between the lowest position and 100% green power? Do you know off the top of your
I
head?
don't know off the top of my head right now, so
That's fine. I'll look it
About
up
a
later.
second ago.
today, I think they voted, I think they voted today, right? The state or the Utilities Commission?
Yeah,
the
they were
rates
making a
for-
decision. I don't know that they've announced, I was just looking to see if they've announced it. They haven't yet.
So I just signed up for the 100%. It was 15.9 cents or something a kilowatt hour in that sort of range. I mean, the lowest position is probably somewhere hovering around 10 cents.
10.9.
Okay,
something like that.
10.9.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that's
Thank you.
competitive because I was at a third party supplier just prior to this. Locked in, I was locked in 10 months for 14.9. So it only went up a penny just to join to join the coalition and go with that. So
Give you an idea, the rates are coming down quite a bit. This winter is gonna be great. But I think it'll probably go through these rates, but community power is gonna be for the base. Basic is gonna be 1.8. And for Eversource for the lowest level is gonna be 8.9. I think that's what,
8.1 and 8.9. I think you said 1.8.
oh, yeah, sorry,
it's 8.1.
dyslexia, 8.1 and
Cents per kilowatt.
8.9. So I think that's probably what
That's
ended up getting approved. It sounded like from last night.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So they did say it last night. I wasn't sure if they actually announced it last night.
I don't think it was official. I think it was
it's not official.
tentative.
It's just that's in the rumor mill right now.
They have to vote on it.
So I guess on a related question, if we're trying to get more people to go to the higher level plans of renewable generated energy, is the coalition, I'm assuming the answer is going to be yes to this question, is the coalition going to try to sway the state of New Hampshire to promote utility scale renewable developments in the state, or are we just going to have to keep finding developments in other state to buy our renewable power from? Because that would be,
That's a big question.
You know what I mean?
That's a big question for tonight.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that's
But-
it's just something to think about. You want
Yeah.
people to start buying 100% renewable power and like, hey, you've got to make it somewhere.
Yeah.
And is New Hampshire going to do that, or are they just going to sit on their hands like they've been doing?
And yeah, it's a great question. And, Clean Energy New Hampshire
Get a price on
is
carbon.
spending a lot of time up at the Capitol, right? Advocating for, we can't wait any longer. New Hampshire's the worst when it comes to renewables in New England. And, this is ridiculous. So, yeah, it's a great question that you ask. And of course, what can we do here in Portsmouth? Commercial, residential to increase, and it could be a commercial solar array, but it's also, look how much commercial building space we have here too. Right? Are we incentivizing, are we educating commercial real estate owners in Portsmouth? So there's a lot of opportunities there. A lot of things to look at. One more thing on engagement is climate action plan. We set the date for the last meeting for that with the
So-
consultants.
We're still working on that. We're actually having trouble finding space.
Okay,
Meetings, I guess, are really piling up at the end of January, but originally it's supposed to be last week of January, maybe the 1st or 2nd of February. But that might get pushed out a week depending on when we can schedule it. But around that time, yeah, it's workshop number 3, last community engagement.
because that's gonna be a big or important meeting. Because we're so far down the road before we sign off on that and finish it.
Right.
That meeting gives us an opportunity to
Final input.
review it with everyone, yeah.
Yeah, so the draft plan should be ready by
Mhm.
then, review, and then maybe a month and a half later, they should have like a final plan to send into city council to be approved, and then they'll have like a celebration outreach event.
So are you guys familiar with the climate action plan?
We're having a party at Liar's Bench for this.
Sure.
Informal.
I've been there since last night.
Wow, that's a long time. Okay, so that's, is there anything, does anybody here have an update for the solar overlay district? Because Peter's not here.
Sorry, what was
Oh,
that?
no, the solar overlay district, because Peter's not here. I don't know. Do you have?
I think that was from last.
Yes. Okay, so that's not on this month's.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, nope.
I don't know. You needed an update on that from Peter. So,
I think it's one that we should probably track every month.
Mhm.
Personally, I don't know what others think. We probably should, yeah, just like EV charging, these two, I think, should be on the agenda every month for an update. Need to, I think the city council wants to know.
The EV charging, if
Is-
I'm correct, Kay, it's scheduled for planning board
Yeah.
Is it tonight?
January,
in January. I think it's
January?
like the
Okay.
first actual meeting in January.
first or second, yeah.
It's in the middle of the month. So I'm not sure.
So then, Ben, Peter and Kate, I think either you or Peter probably in this meeting could provide an update because of the role that you folks play on the
For our
planning,
next meeting in January.
yeah, on the planning board.
See how it goes.
Yeah. Okay,
Can I just, did anybody read Margot's email? Margot Peabody? She sent us all an email late. And I just wanted, since we're talking about solar, she said I did inquire in our most recent school board meeting about solar canopies and or arrays being added when the school parking lots are repaved. And she said it will be considered by the board during budget season and planning for CIP projects.
so it's not part of the project. this
Not
summer.
currently, no, but it sounds like,
So-
that said, she is also, her term on the school board ends this month, so I don't know who will be
Yeah.
pushing that agenda item.
Seems like a little bit of a missed opportunity considering if they're really gonna tear up the parking lot at the high school
Mhm.
and redo it. Wouldn't that be the time to put in infrastructure? Even if you don't put the canopies in, at least put, I'm looking at Josh, at least put some infrastructure under,
Well, all those projects that are coming up now will be applied with the city's green building policy that the green building group just got passed a couple months ago. So everything that goes through the RFP process for the city projects, like paving, will have to go through consideration for energy efficiency stuff. That Tori and her group, Tori Aubrey.
so is the project at the high school, has that not been awarded then?
Which project? The
The,
paving one?
the paving?
It definitely looks like it's in the CIP for this upcoming year. I don't know.
Yeah, so it
That's
won't
fine.
be, it won't happen
Okay,
until
yeah.
the following.
2025.
That's what I'm saying is a missed opportunity. To, if not include solar canopies. Maybe at least put some electrical infrastructure. So it could be added more cost effectively in the future.
Yeah, I think at least with the paving part of the green building policy, there's something in for considering EV charging infrastructure when repaving.
Yeah, that's a requirement in the code that was written for city projects. And that's an internal policy, so the city has to consider those things whenever paving, doing major paving projects. And parking lots. But I don't know if the funding was actually put in the CIP for that, like, because the CIP was drafted probably before the green building code was adopted, so I don't even know if the projects that are currently sitting in the CIP, if there's enough funding for all of them to meet the code that was just adopted for the city. So that's something that we'll have to go back and look at.
Yeah.
I have a clarification question. When Margot was here, I assumed that they may had staggered terms and she's going on. Is she going off the committee now? At this point?
Correct.
They do have staggered terms, so I think her term ends.
Okay.
She didn't run
and
again.
Yeah, she
I
didn't
can
run.
ask the Eco Club, if you, Margot was defining a policy that would establish a guidelines for how Eco Club members were represented on this committee, and she was gonna type that all out and put that out. And I know she'd worked on it for a couple of months. Has anybody heard anything about it?
Yes. She was at a wellness meeting and she talked to a few of us at the end, and she did mention it. Just that she was working on one and that it would be 2 students, I think, that were voted in. If I'm correct.
And the one thing that we spoke to her about that, the idea of having 2 students that come every month, is that while we hope that that would be able, like that there would be 2 people that could come every single month moving forward, it might be a little bit hard. Like we can come, but we're also seniors, so we'll be graduating in June, and finding 2 more people. We might be able to find a group of 6 that would rotate and they would each get to come through. But finding 2, just with what we've seen with commitment issues just on our Eco Club and Wellness Club levels, has been tricky. So we
And
spoke to
not
her
only
about that.
commitment, just like being very busy.
Yeah.
School sports get in the way, and I think it'd be easier if there's like a slight rotation to that, if
Yeah.
possible.
So can you just clarify for me, how is this set up now from the Eco Club? Or is it still in process?
Still in process. Right now, we're trying to make it consistent, but it's mostly whoever can go.
Like
last
tonight,
week we
Evie's
could-
at a different meeting for Seco Students for Sustainability, and Katie Bell and Raina both left early for Christmas vacation or holiday vacation, so Emma and I were able to come. But like we might be able to come next month, and we can probably come. It's just like getting it, the idea of having 2 people that can come consecutively for the following years is something that might have to be reevaluated.
It'll be challenging.
Good, so when you do go back, if you have any clarification or if that's being, you could do an update on how that is, because ideally, I think it was like seniors like yourself would have a junior and maybe even a freshman, so that is kind of like that. I think that's what's in.
That would be ideal.
That's
We
in-
do have juniors, sophomores, and freshmen that are gonna take leadership roles in Eco Club once we graduate. It's just getting them to be able to come to these when they can't drive and they have other commitments, so.
So Fred's gonna willing to pick up, oh, excuse me.
Yeah,
Okay.
we will work on it though.
Yes, we
Hopefully we'll have a
definitely
group of
do
people that are able
want
to
that.
rotate through the.
We are glad to have you both here.
Mhm.
We appreciate it.
Okay, so was there anything else on EV charging? Or we'll bring it up next month? Okay, what do you have, Kate, is next on the agenda? Quick question. We all again.
Small engines, yep.
Okay, Steve.
Oh. Oh, me? Oh,
Okay.
wait a minute.
Steve, I can jump on it if you want to tag team.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so we got together last week to start putting together some ideas onto paper. The overarching topic is around the question of how might we reduce greenhouse gas emissions from small engine usage in Portsmouth and transition over to electric powered landscaping equipment. So within the scope, we looked at Portsmouth residents, Portsmouth landscapers, then Portsmouth landscaping equipment. And then specifically within the lawn equipment area, we're looking at things like lawnmowers, weed whackers, leaf blowers, snow blowers. Out of scope, we're saying electric vehicles. So like we're saying buses and trains, just because it will get so broad if we focus on all of those.
Mopeds too, I think we said.
Mopeds, yeah, we said, yeah, so just electric vehicles as a whole, anything that falls into that is out. So then we started to look at, well, what are some of the current problems that we're seeing and what are some of the different shared electric lawn care advantages? So we currently looked at some of the ICE, which is internal combustion engines, and we said the greenhouse gas emissions, noise emissions, which sometimes you might want to mow your lawn early, but then other people are sleeping or late at night. Expensive service costs. It's super expensive to bring your lawnmower in for service care, especially in the spring when they won't start. It's smelly and dirty. People don't really want to put them in their cars if it's leaking gas and oil. It can also smell up your garage. No one enjoys changing oil and cleaning carburetors. It's not like, oh boy, I can't wait for spring so I can go spray out the carburetor and pour this gas out. Gas spills, there's a lot of spillage from gas. Expired gas goes bad pretty quickly now with ethanol in it. So there's that aspect. And then if you look at the utilization rates of this equipment, if you think about your purchase, a lot of people are purchasing something, a lawnmower, for instance, that's used maybe 6 months of the year. Within that, you're maybe using it every other weekend. And within that, you're maybe using it for an hour to two, depending on the size of your lawn. So if you put those numbers together, that's a 0.5% utilization rate. So if you think about how often this equipment is utilized and how much impact is created by purchasing equipment, the embodied carbon, it just sitting there, pouring out the gas, everyone's gas going bad for such a low utilization rate, there's definitely some low hanging fruit there. Currently, every resident typically has their own equipment. I don't know how many other people are sharing lawn equipment, leaf blowers and all that, but if you have something that's underutilized, it's actually a great opportunity to share that with other residents. Also, the machines don't always start when you're needed. So a lot of times in the springtime, when it's time to go mow the lawn, or your snowblower during the first snowstorm might not start. So also the last aspect that we found is that another current problem is, and it's dropping, but electric equipment pricing can be prohibitive, but it's starting to drop down. It's mostly driven by the battery costs. That's the major area. So then what we started to come up with some ideas or some advantages about using shared lawn care equipment, and that's electric, is there's no maintenance on electric stuff. You just like on a lawnmower, you might have to sharpen the blade every once in a while, but for the most part, you don't have to winterize it, you don't have to change the oil, you don't have to change the spark plug, you don't have to clean the carb, you don't have to worry about the gas going bad. The costs are becoming less prohibitive on not electric vehicles, but electric power equipment. That's why you're seeing a lot more of electric drills and different equipment that is easier to access. The aspect of just from conceptually, Portsmouth has a really unique community where people can come together, and it's not as far spread out, that using the community aspect, it's a reason to get to know some of your neighbors, to share some of this equipment, and you can split some of the cost of, I'll grab the leaf blower, you grab the lawnmower. Or it could even be a opportunity for kids in high school. I had a landscaping business when I was in high school. Maybe one family maybe a high schooler buys an electric lawnmower and they can rent it out, and people can use it pay per use, like you see for like those little electric scooters, as pay per use, or for an added amount, the kid can actually go and mow the lawn. There's a concept called a tool crib when you go into like in the shipyard and a few other areas. There's a tool crib. You can take out a piece, like almost like a library system. So that's another advantage that we saw, is that you could share stuff with neighbors. Splitting the cost, it will cut the cost of a lawnmower in half, which eliminates the barrier to entry of the pricing. And then the biggest carbon impact of electric vehicles, at least, is the batteries. But if you start to distribute the load, or you start to share it with other people, that minimizes that. We also looked at some of the proposed, we came up with a couple, we looked at reference towns and reference cities and seeing what they're doing. That was shared, I believe, in the last session. That was already pulled together. So we have a bunch of references from other areas. And then we have some proposed initiatives, and we also want to collect the feedback and your asks as well of what else we should look into. So some of the proposed initiatives is host an electric lawn care equipment sales reps. So salespeople are always looking for reasons to go and show off their products. So maybe there's an area that we can go and host some sort of a demo. So maybe with the DPW, we choose like we choose some sort of a field like at the community campus, and people can go and try different lawn equipment. When maybe some of the salespeople can bring a leaf blower and they can bring a lawnmower, because a lot of people want to touch it and feel it before they get it. So there could be some sort of a demo day, or at the library or the community campus. Host events, so we could host events like mow your city, or it could be similar to that, a demo day to like out front of the library. Maybe the library wants people to come in and it's an excuse to come in and try some equipment. Bulk purchase agreements. So if there's whole neighborhoods going in on these programs, there can be better deals when you get if you purchase 10 of them for an entire neighborhood versus just getting one at a time. There's always better margins. Equipment loan programs. So talking a little bit about like a tool crib or the library or a DPW. So possibly even offering pickup and delivery, because a lot of times you know when you're going to have time to, when you're hoping to have time to do the lawn mowing, maybe you can have it dropped off at your door, so you don't have to deal with it transporting, because it's just not fun to transport lawn equipment. Partnering with a local landscaping company that wants to transition over to electric power equipment and use them as a lighthouse project to share why they turned over to it, how it worked for them. And if a big landscaping lawn care company is using it, then that's a nice way to share out the stories, whether it's in emails or in different activities. I could actually think of one that's a customer of mine that has transitioned to electric vehicles, and they might actually transition over. Create a share with your neighbor program and best practices. So share some ideas of like, this is how you'd set it up with your neighbors. Offer some best practices. Talk with the stores that are selling the electric equipment and gather some of their feedback. I've talked with a couple that like Abushan, or not Abushan, I think it's Ricky Lumber now. But I've talked with Ace Hardware and said, hey, are these things selling? And they go, oh yes, the sales are incredible. Ask them, why are people transitioning? What are the reasons? Why do they want to move over to it? And help to share that out to the community of why. And then analyzing other cities' programs and upcycle some of their wins. And then we're proposing to a target launch date of early spring, when people's lawnmowers won't start after the winter. And then collect data on emissions and create educational materials about more eco-friendly lawn care. Lawn care is actually really intensive, between all the water, the fertilizer. We've talked about bark mulch and where it's shipped in from. So kind of educating, because a lot of times people might just not know how intensive it is. I know my mom had a organic garden club in our backyard and a community garden, and she was on a mission to remove all grass, because grass it's not great for the animals. It's not like they're not getting a lot from it. So maybe more less invasive species. So those are some of the ideas, but I'll pause it there for a second. And our ask is, what else do you want included? Is there certain things that you're really agreeing with? Certain things you go, ooh, if we've tried this before. Also, have you seen it work in other communities, or where it fell short, that we can learn from those?
So first I will say, I think that's awesome. Like you've really considered a lot of options for residents, and I think that's amazing. I have a couple of questions, because ironically, after our last meeting, and I actually got 2 emails from people asking me to bring this up, is what are we going to do at a municipal level? Because we were walking through that little park over near South Mill Pond, and there was probably 3 or 4 DPW guys out there with their gas-powered blowers, clearing all the leaves out of that park, which, to be honest and candid, living in a house, we are very lucky, but we have big oak trees and we live near conservation land, and electric blowers historically do not move wet oak leaves at all. So that's not a viable option for us. And, you know, we are happy to rake, but that is, you know, obviously the convenience, the time factor, like for DPW workers trying to clear off heavy wet oak leaves that are not something you can let mulch on your lawn because they just kill everything under them because they create mold and stuff. So what, you know, how do you engage with DPW? How do you get them to start thinking about what they can do? What is actually viable to as options to shift towards some of these things? Because, you know, like I rake, I don't mind raking, but Steve will just take the blower out because he can get out there and clear a bunch of our yard quick.
Yeah.
And it's gross. I hate it, but I understand the practicality of it. So how do you square some of those challenges for, you know, some of the other pieces of the
Steve, you wanna
question, I
take that one?
guess?
I
Well,
just want to make sure I capture this. I want to make sure I capture it.
Yeah.
So what do we do on a municipal level? Electric blowers don't historically move wet leaves that well. The convenience factor, you can't let wet leaves sit. DPW valuable solutions and gas blowers are quick.
Right.
Okay.
And not just not quick, but effective in that scenario, you know, if you've got an inch or two of, and I don't know, Steve might be able to speak to this better than I can, but historically, if you have a couple inches of wet oak leaves, an electric blower won't really do much for those.
It depends which ones you're using. I have my electric one is pretty powerful. But just to start with the DPW question, I have reached out. So I would say that we're beginning to sort of feel that out and I think there's maybe like Max, you mentioned Max earlier. I think he's using electric change laws in his job. I think it's a matter of getting them to sort of agree to start small, like, you know, maybe start with the edgers, the weed whackers, the stuff like that. And just sort of maybe build from there. And because it is going to be sort of a transition for them, it's going to be a new way of learning how to work, because now you can't just carry gas cans around and just fill up whenever you need to or drive back or whatever. They're gonna have to start thinking about banks of batteries and the batteries charged and stuff like that. So it's just it's a different way of working. So I anticipate there's going to be some pushback on that. As far as moving like heavy leaves and stuff, yeah, they use the backpack blowers. There's commercial backpack blowers, like battery powered backpack blowers out there. There's also like the push behind blowers, which work really well. I actually haven't thought about looking those up. I imagine there must be some battery powered walk behind blowers. Have you ever seen those things?
No.
Those things, they're far superior to the backpack blowers. You just walk behind them and I've used them. They're great.
Good to know.
So yeah, there are options out there. There's solutions. I think it's going to be a matter of getting them to agree to start making that change. And then just, yeah, there's going to be tricky things that they're going to have to figure out. I mean, that's just the way transitions are. And if we can get them to sort of accept that, the challenge of that, that would be the victory. Because you know how it is. Municipalities aren't always out there spearheading transitions. They just, they know what works, and they like to do what works. So yeah, that's going to be one of the challenges for sure.
to piggyback on what Steve said, Steve, Chaz and I, we were talking about the climate action plan.
Mhm.
Climate action plan is something that is adopted by the city.
Right.
And so once it's adopted by the city, there are some pieces in the climate action plan, at least one in there, that could equate to the city taking action towards moving away from small gas powered engines to replacing with electric devices. And so it's a paradigm shift, like Steve said. I mean, a year ago, 2 years ago, we didn't have a climate action plan. We've progressed to this point, and I think the same thing, DPW and the Parks Department and such is going to progress, but hopefully the CAP will help give some guidance, and maybe the city manager can put some pressure on DPW also to say, okay, guys, you know, it's the climate action plan. It belongs to the city. It belongs to the people. DPW is here to service the people, service the city. We need to start following the climate action plan and act as a role model too of sorts. Does that oh yeah, sorry, Steve.
Yeah, no, just it, so just because you were talking about the climate action plan, and so I pulled a couple of things out of the draft strategies that I think specifically provide guidance for this. One says adopt an environmentally preferable purchasing policy and include energy efficiency and waste provisions in standard specifications and government contracts. Another one says develop and implement a fleet electrification plan, which if you think about that, your fleet of small engines is still a fleet. It's when they go for fleet maintenance, they go to the same maintenance shop. And then create a borrow lease culture in Portsmouth in relation to tools, appliances, transportation, et cetera, which goes back to what Chaz was talking about with the sharing economy and stuff like that. So there are, even in the draft strategies, there's sort of these guidelines that we can use.
Going back to it in 1 second. I think a lot of it as well is Steve brought up a really good point. Start with the simple things and start to get that adoption and start to transition over. I've seen a lot of people transition over to the lawnmowers because now lawnmowers have enough power to do a good job. And it might not be, everything might not be there. Like I was in 3D printing when 3D printing was massive and people want to 3D print everything, but it's just one tool in your workshop. You don't need to 3D print everything. So it might be, maybe leaf blowers are not quite there yet, to your point. Maybe they are. I honestly haven't used an electric leaf blower. I haven't used a gas leaf blower in a long time. But I think it will be assessing, is it right there? And the other thing that a lot of people don't look at, it's more in the vehicle space, but I'm sure it's also in a fleet of lawn equipment, is the total cost of ownership. When you look at just like on a vehicle, for instance, it's like vehicles versus bicycling. It's, well, my car payment's this, but then when you add in your insurance, when you add in, there's probably going to be an accident within the 10 years. If you add in your gas price, your depreciation, you add in all your maintenance, your tires, it stacks up. And I'd imagine doing that side-by-side comparison of total cost of ownership versus initial capital investment, it probably makes a lot more sense financially because you're not doing the oil changes, the carburetor cleans, the spark plugs, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's some opportunity. When you think about the parks crew, you tend to think about like the biggest parks in the heaviest part of the season. It's not, it's natural because that's when you see them, they're out there. But yeah, there is a lot of like sort of random small engine stuff scattered about at the various facilities that just get intermittent use. And when they come to the end of their life cycle, are they going to buy another small push mower, like a gasoline powered, or would that be an easy thing to swap out for a battery powered push mower? Just there's a lot of that's not necessarily in the public eye or whatever that we're just, go unnoticed almost, that there could be some opportunities to, start there as well. The parks crew is going to be, the big challenge because they're doing the heaviest lifting. Sure.
I had two things I wanted to say. The first is around cost benefit analysis. So we talk about replacing equipment, which clearly there's a cost when you replace equipment, but we can replace this equipment as we reach like the regular end of life of equipment, because this equipment doesn't last forever. So it's not unreasonable to think even with a little bit of an additional cost, we can do this at the city in not too long of a period of time. But it probably would be 10 years to rotate out all the gas powered equipment at the city. But you're always thinking about what's the cost benefit, it's cost taxpayers more money. If you're gonna have to spend money on more expensive equipment, you're probably gonna have to have backup batteries. I know this because I have one of these electric blowers. It works fantastically. But we have to have a backup battery because it runs out of power. We have a small yard, so we just keep a backup charger. But if you were doing a huge space, you'd have to have a lot of backup batteries that you're charging. So that would be a considerable investment. but at the same time, the cost is really not just the cost of the equipment, which is what everyone thinks about, is like, it's gonna cost us X amount more. Well, what's the cost of not doing it? So, and I think it's really important to always remind people that there is a cost to us in noise and all of these things, these disadvantages that you mentioned. And then the second thing is that I think one of the things I heard more than once when I was out knocking doors this last campaign was that people hate the blowers, the loud gas powered blowers, because of the noise. And that they must be violating noise ordinance, right? Which it's very hard for us to enforce noise ordinance because you have to catch it when it's happening, and we don't necessarily have compliance officers running all over the city trying to catch people violating noise ordinance. But we could consider ultimately, banning like gas powered blowers in the city. But in order to do that, we have to have this transition period where we're incentivizing landscapers to buy electric equipment, because the last thing we want to do is put a ban in place and suddenly no one will come and work in Portsmouth and do landscaping service for people. And then everybody's going out and buying lawnmowers because they can't get anyone to mow their lawn anymore. So so you have to be really conscious of like, how do we incentivize really the businesses that are doing the majority of that work and homeowners to a certain point, and when do we hit that critical point where we can say, okay, at this point, everyone has to do this. So, and I don't know how we monitor that, but to find a way to do it.
And real quick, when we met, we talked about a lot of different things that we could do. Of course, there's only, I think ultimately what we wanted to do was go forth and take a couple and start vetting out a couple proposals, start putting some meat on the bones. And then maybe we all vote and say, okay, in 2024, yeah, these are 2 or 3 things that we would like to move forward with in relationship to, gas versus electric powered. Because we can't do everything. And so, where do we get the biggest bang for the buck, I guess? And yeah, sorry.
I was walking with a very knowledgeable landscape designer, and because thank you for your raising this, I was just watching blowers and lawnmowers, and what he said was, and I didn't go in depth, but basically he said that if you have leaves on your lawn, you can just have your electric lawnmower, not rake them, and just grind them up and leave them there. If you do want to collect them, you can just take your lawnmower and you just get them into the bag, and you have 1/5 the volume. And then he said on beds at this time of the year, leave them there. They're good for your flower beds. So culturally, I think if at the sustainability fair, if some of the best practices with photographs, I want to thank you for your raising my consciousness as I go around, even seeing the woman with the plastic paddles picking up leaves like a turtle. I mean, I'm starting to be, what you're doing is raising my consciousness. So you've been effective. So anyway, thank you.
So just looking at the time, do we want to talk about, sorry, Wes.
I just couple of things, quick things. I work at Home Depot. We're the largest company of its kind on the planet. And I can tell you that everything's electric. We sell some corded stuff, and we sell, I think, some gasoline, but basically the market has shifted. And it's shifted rapidly and powerfully. Batteries are getting stronger. I think if you were to take a look at that, it would really empower the conversation you're having. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is if you decide you're going to have a fair and you need some contribution money for, I don't know, lights, stage, whatever, talk to me and I'll get you connected with the right person at Home Depot to ask for money.
Yeah, Home Depot does, I was reading someplace where they're fantastic about giving small grants out.
Yeah.
To local groups, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Benefit their sales too.
are there any other questions? And then we can, so what are the next steps?
Hang on.
The project manager and me. Where do we go from here?
Yes.
Next step.
So, and provided that no one else has any other plans that they want us to look into, I assume we're just gonna look at what we've got and just sort of, like you said, figure out what, just a couple of the good ones and go bang for buck and sort of start filling in the details on how to go about it and
So-
then come report back with our, I guess, maybe final suggestions to the committee.
So I liked what you said the other day, I think, said something about voting. Which I think you said something about that, which I thought was great, because we could the three of us could continue to work together, come back to the next meeting in January. With some of these kind of vetted out a little bit more, and we could, as a committee, we could vote and say. Who likes number one, who likes number two, and, or something like that.
Yeah.
Going one step further on the project management side as well. I think on our side, we can have owners of the different ones.
Okay.
We can assign ownership and we can prioritize high priority and low priority.
Mhm.
And then when we come back, share some of our finds from that, or these are the ones that we categorize as high priority and low priority. This is near term, this is long term. That we can focus on. There's kind of like the low hanging fruit, and then there's like this long-term strategic.
Yeah,
So,
and we can add in there too, the benefit and kind of return on investment.
Yeah.
You know, because we could say, hey, we think we could do this, and it would take committee members. 10 hours or 20 resource hours to organize this and do this. What's the benefit? If we're gonna spend 20 hours of committee members' time, what do we get out of it? And then we're not just saying, hey, that's a cool idea.
Mhm.
Let's do that because that's cool. Right.
has anyone seen this really well implemented in other, or
I want to suggest that we close this conversation off. It's by 8 minutes to 8.
Yeah.
My understanding is this meeting ends at 8 o'clock. And there's like a half a dozen agenda items.
30,
8:30.
Oh, someplace it was published as 8 o'clock.
that was a typo.
All right, good.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Was it?
No, that's fine. It used to be 8:30 and I said, it's only 8 o'clock. But my basic comment still holds. There's a lot of meeting agenda, I think,
Yeah.
that needs to get to.
So that one is done. And then Kate, help me out. What's the next one that we have on the real agenda?
Discussion of draft cap strategies.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Kate, that's up to you.
Yes. So I know we talked about it last month, bringing together updated drafts, and for the most part, we didn't have updated greenhouse gas emissions drafts. We're still working on assigning budgeting scores to, I think that. So they ended up, DEP sent us some more climate adaptation strategies that they were gonna add in. Some notes on each one of those, but I know last month we had a lot more people here, and I think Effie was particularly interested in this too. But just talking about different strategies and if there's potential for maybe trying to get something that is like an actual project we need funding for, or if we want to start a project in the spring that maybe doesn't require funding that we could just do ourselves or do through like committee work or advising the city council to do something, but with the CIP coming up, we were talking about doing the budget for something. I don't know. The planning department, our budget is final, so we can't put anything through our budget, but I don't know if that's something that anybody wants to talk about. We still have that $20,000 reserved for our first two projects, if we want to just wait for that. Maybe in the mid-spring, early summer. to hit the ground running, but I don't know if people wanted to talk more about that. I don't know, since Effie's not here, she kind of was spearheading that idea.
No, she was, if I remember correctly, the last meeting, she was very interested in viewing what the consultants had put together before it is shared, I think, for the meeting in January. Could
Oh.
the committee members get a copy of that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think I think I sort of rushed them into getting this before our meeting today, so that's why they didn't send an updated greenhouse gas emissions reductions strategies. That's why they just sent the old ones. But that's definitely something that we'll get before the workshop number 3, I think, so we can at least come prepared.
Okay,
Um,
so at least at least to distribute it for the committee, through the committee to the
Yeah,
committee
I can
members.
definitely do that.
Okay.
And I think with the greenhouse gas emissions strategies that they had, for the most part, I think most of those were the same. They added in a few because we had some late feedback submissions from a couple different people. And they're really working on getting that sort of scoring matrix in. So it's not just like high impact versus low impact versus cost, but also, you know, what kind of grants are available? Will this have to be out of city funding? Looking at how much impact is this going to have on emissions? How much impact is it going to have on localized heat indexes? And like, they're looking at a bunch of different factors to really up the scoring of those strategies. So they'll definitely be more in depth and
Just to help improve quantifying
right.
about, okay,
Sort of
makes
the
sense.
impact in the long term. Is it going to be something that achieves a net zero at 2035? Is it going to be net zero by 2050? They're still looking at their forecasting goals and trying to see what gets us to net zero by, actually, I think they settled on 2050. So what gets us to net zero by 2050?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they think they'll have worked through that in the next week or so?
Probably not, because I think they're all going on Christmas vacation. So,
Do you think they'll have it done by the cap being done?
oh, of course, that's
Okay,
part of,
just
yeah,
making
that's
sure.
part of the cap. So, I mean, it'll be done before workshop number 3. because that's,
Okay.
Yeah, and
So-
then that's our final time to really.
So we could just keep an eye on that and try to, hopefully they'll have that done at least a few days before workshop
Yeah.
number
Oh, I would
3,
think
so,
mid-January is probably a good
okay,
point where we'll have that ready.
okay. Any more on that topic? Anyone have any? Oh, Wes?
Yeah, Kate sent out 2 attachments with the agenda. The one was a big long list of strategies, and then the other was, I think, entitled draft adaptation strategy, which seems very short.
Yeah, well, I think the original focus was on greenhouse gas reduction strategies. And so adaptation is sort of like an appendix. to the climate action plan.
Oh,
After that.
okay, okay.
Because the Coastal Resiliency Initiative really.
So it's
focuses
not
on-
like one leads to the other. It's I got it.
Right,
Thank
yeah,
you.
It's sort of a
That
supplement.
clarifies it.
Yeah, that was it. So just to speak on that, that was kind of a decision we made at the beginning of the process, knowing that there was that coastal resilience, like there had been resilience studies and recommendations made in other studies. So this one was, the cap was going to focus more on carbon reduction.
That's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to say, I really appreciate the adaptation strategies being included. Because I'm particularly concerned. I understand why the decision was to focus on, strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but at the same time, most of the decisions we make at the city council, are going to be decisions around infrastructure and capital projects, and that's mostly adaptation. And if it's not in the climate action plan, then it's really hard as a city councilor to say that this is a priority for the city. So it's really important that those are included.
Okay.
Do they,
Good point.
just to,
Yeah.
sorry. Will the climate action plan make, I assume maybe they'll make reference to some of those other studies that are out there and existing and sort of bring them in that way? Is that a potential thing?
Yeah,
that
a
could
lot,
happen? Okay.
some of the strategies are directly from like the renewable energy study,
Okay.
the 2018.
Yeah,
What's it called?
there was the The policy, and then I think we call it the renewable energy policy framework.
Okay, so there's some direct language from those. It pulls from a couple from the Coastal Resiliency Initiative, from the open space study. There's a couple that they pulled directly from, and then some regional plans that they looked at, and like NOAA stuff and state plans, things like that.
Because you want to enable the council to do as much as possible
Yeah.
without, well, it's not really in there. Well, it's in this other document.
Right.
Well, that's the other document, yeah, so the more we can enable them going forward, better.
Yeah, it's just really helpful.
Yep.
It's one of those, like, for the last 2 years, I keep being told, well, when we get the climate action plan,
Mhm.
then we'll do, at the city, and you're like, we don't have time to wait, right? But at the same time, the city, the planning process drives everything we do. If it's not in the climate action plan, then it's not in the master plan. If it's not in the master plan, it doesn't happen.
Then it's
So-
not gonna get approved through, why even bother putting it in the CIP too?
Well, that's the
Right?
problem. It
If
won't go in
if
the
it's not
CIP.
there, there's no basis to ask for the money. Yeah. Makes sense.
Let me reiterate what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is important to me, at least, to get it clear. For the city council to accelerate and scale our movement towards the climate safe planet, we need to take actions. To take actions, the city council, by mandate, needs to follow the climate action plan and the master plan. If it's not in there or someplace stated specifically, it's just not a viable way to move forward. So we need a review that the important things are in the climate action plan, so that if that's what Effie was getting at, there's something missing, we want to get it in there, or that's what you're looking for. Is that what I'm hearing?
It drives the budget process. So what's in our planning documents, yes, drives the budget process, and we don't write the budget at the city council, the staff writes the budget. So if it's not in the climate action plan that says they need to do X, Y, and Z, then the budget won't reflect that,
Got it,
and they won't have the money to do it.
got it, got it.
So that's why it's so important. And the planning board won't incorporate it in the, in the CIP budget. So we can introduce things, as Josh and I both have done, at the late stages of the CIP process. But it's really harder to get buy-in if it's already gone through this whole process and no one thought it was important.
So for anyone who doesn't know, the CIP is the Capital Improvement Plan. And it is a long-term planning document that looks out 5 years. So they can budget the big purchases. So big things like fire trucks or buildings. I think the threshold's $75,000.
50.
$50,000
50.
to be on it. And so it's the planning board, I think, is actually meeting and discussing it right now. And it changes every year, so things could be delayed, they could be brought forward, but if it's not in the CIP, it's gonna be hard to do because all of the city's financing is based off of projections, based off of that document.
Yeah, and a great example of this is something that I asked about last summer, because we were going to acquire some new vehicles for DPW, and I said, have we looked at electric versus, and it's heavy equipment? And the response was, well, the electric doesn't provide what we need at the moment. There isn't an equivalency in electric for this equipment. And I asked specifically, in the future though, can we always do an assessment if there is equipment that's available that would provide the service? What is the differential in cost? What is the long-term maintenance differential to? So that we're making an educated decision about buying new vehicles. But there's nothing written down anywhere in the city that says we need to convert to electric vehicles and electric vehicle fleet necessarily. So when that's in the climate action plan, then we can say, well, we adopted it. It says we need to do this. Yeah.
I like what Chad said before, the total cost of ownership, which is something that we should always be looking at. Because just because you can go to renewable energy or something like that, doesn't mean that you should. Right? I mean, we have to be fiscally responsible too. And so there's a balance there.
Mhm.
Now, okay, so Kate, I think that's it for that topic.
Perfect.
What was the next topic you had on the real agenda?
Well, it's sort of like the last topic, which was going over the meeting schedule for next year and the rotations.
So
for-
let's hold off on that one. Real quick, Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee. So I think there are 2 seats open. I've applied for one of them. And the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee, they are re-upping. All the members have to decide if they're gonna re-up starting January 1st. And so I think everybody, except for 2 members that have dropped off, are going to. I've applied for 1 slot. There is another slot open. So just putting that out there. If anybody's interested in energy, it's not just electric, energy efficiency. If you know somebody that's interested, I've sat in on a couple
I'm
of
not
meetings.
volunteering, but have they set their meeting schedule for the coming year? Because
No,
No.
but it's typically the 3rd Wednesday night it's from 6:30 to. Oh,
I would like to say it's typically the third Wednesday night. I
wait,
think
what did I
it's
say?
The third, I think it's the second Wednesday usually, but
Okay.
it doesn't, it moves.
Okay, because I think John, that came up last night, and I think John was saying that they're gonna try to target, I think, the
Third
3rd
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Previously, there were some people board or committee members that had some conflicts, so.
Right.
And they also, last summer, they didn't meet for a couple months.
Yep.
And there was talk about maybe doing that again this summer, but I don't know if it becomes a standing committee, they switch from blue ribbon to standing committee. I think likely they'd meet through the summer.
They haven't switched yet, and
Yeah.
that's an ongoing discussion,
Of whether,
whether to switch from
Okay.
a blue ribbon to a standing committee. So
okay,
we've been having that discussion with them for a while, and I don't know. I don't know if they will or not, but a lot of communities that have community power have a standing committee now. So we'll see what they decide.
yeah, because I got an email from CNH, and they were kind of surprised. They were like, "Oh, this is not a permanent committee." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, back off." We're working on it.
Portsmouth structure is weird.
Can I ask a question? So if we're a member of the community power and these sort of that committee is are they like the advisory committee for this? Like I think the term I'm thinking for is like a steering committee. Who directs who controls our participation in community power? Like who makes those decisions and stuff like that? I assume it
so-
would be the advisory committee.
Yeah, the committee is really a steering committee, but our executives who make decisions when we have to have them made
Mhm.
between meetings and when it's not something that requires a council vote is Karen Kennard, the city manager, and Peter Rice. Those are our representatives
Okay.
for community power. So there are officers that we designated at the city council level to represent us to community power. That said, the committee makes most of those recommendations and has that discussion. And so far, there haven't been any real decisions beyond choosing to join and signing all the agreements and designating our individuals. And fortunately, we have a person, Kevin Charette, who sits on the committee, is the vice chair for the board for the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. So we're in a fortunate position that we already have quite a high level of representation. We would always know beforehand.
Yeah, well, I guess the only reason I ask is because in my mind, that would be the reason to actually be a standing committee, just to make sure that steering committee is always there to guide our relationship with the community power.
I think they're having that's the discussion they're having right now is, do we do this? Is it a subcommittee of sustainability? Is it its own committee?
Is it, I think they have all these questions about, because there's some overlap in what the two committees do. So,
And that came up quite a bit last night, because we were brainstorming goals for 2024
mhm.
and swim lanes, defined swim lanes. How does the Energy Advisory Committee and the Sustainability Committee at times complement each other? Or maybe even co-execute on different projects, but not duplicate what each other's doing. So I think between the two committees, we'll have to work that out here in 2024. Okay, so next one is you're up with Economic Development Committee.
Yep,
Yeah. Please.
I need your counsel and see if anybody is interested in this. Hello, Mr. Cohn. On behalf of the chair, Bill Cohn, and vice chair, Tom Watson, I'm sending this invitation to attend a portion the next scheduled EDC meeting, January 5th. If you are available, but that's me, but I'm saying anybody who wants to come or give me input. The EDC is embarking on a new calendar year with a focus on increasing advocacy for issues that affect our business community and community. Specifically, the Vice Chair Watson is interested in an overview of the Sustainable Practice Blue Ribbon Committee's efforts and goals to inform the EDC and seek potential areas to collaborate or at least cross-advocate on shared issues. The best time for your attendance would be 8 to 8:30. Now, I'm assuming that's PM, or does anybody know if that meets in the AM or
I
AM,
think they meet in the morning.
yeah.
morning?
Yeah.
So Friday morning from 8 to 8:30, they're an AM. Okay, I'm happy to go. It's a big ask. And does anybody have any input about who anybody would like to come with and be part of a group to present there?
Possibly, potentially, I would join you.
That'd be great. If the two of us are there, we will not only have diversity, we'll have diversity in age and gender, and that's a plus. Okay, now, understanding the question, it's a big question. And what everybody's trying to do is kind of in the area of, with such rapid change, so many institutions trying to redefine who they are, so many people trying to get synergy. They're saying, can we not work in silos? Can we work in a network and support each other? Well, networks take time, and now this is, I think, a great that they took the time and energy. I can talk generally, but does anybody here, if I said to you, I'm gonna just go around the room and say pass, or what could we do with the economic development? They're looking for the community to be economically stable. What comes to your mind, if anything, that you would like us to say we might work on together, and maybe nothing comes out? I'm going to give 10 seconds, see if anything comes up, and I'll just sweep around the room. Okay.
All I'm thinking about right now is brain dead too, but is community power and opting up. I don't know how that would really affect like local businesses and things like that, but trying to work that goal from BP.
Yeah. Great. This is just a brainstorm. We're just to get ideas. Yeah.
Incentives for businesses to be more sustainable. So different, could be programs to help with recycling, it could be just different initiatives. I don't see a lot of initiatives for like economic development for businesses to make more sustainable decisions. Or the carrot.
Wes,
So my ears perked up at the word advocacy. Number one, the EDC should be advocating for pricing carbon.
say
Number
it again,
two, what's that?
pricing,
Pricing carbon.
okay,
Number two, the EDC could be advocating for reforming the electrical transmission process. It currently takes us 10 years to put new transmission lines in. We're meanwhile building renewables. We need to get those renewable energy. We were talking about the wind energy in the Gulf of Maine. Need to get that energy to our households. That takes transmission lines. And the third is to advocate for electrification. I'm a little fuzzier about this one. But the way we're going is off the fossil fuels and into electric. So the more that we can accelerate that transition, the better off we're going to be. And the argument, the simple business argument is moving from fossil fuel energy base to renewable base has tremendous value in terms of stability. The whole fossil fuel phenomenon is a very volatile phenomenon.
thanks, Wes.
So that's what I put in. Thank you.
Great, I appreciate it. Okay,
Think big. I want a transit loop. A transit loop around the city. That's a business project that's funded by businesses. I think hotels, tourism industry businesses, if you had a transit loop, they can find ways to help fund a transit loop. It not only makes it easier for workers, but it reduces strain on parking and assists individuals getting around town who are here visiting and want to frequent their businesses. So that's one. The second thing, skip the stuff. We can get large scale implementation of skip the stuff. That would be fantastic.
large scale
Implementation of skip the stuff, which is initiative to not put extra plastic silverware and all that.
This stuff,
Skip the
fine,
stuff,
yeah,
right?
let's get rid of plastic, yeah.
Right.
okay.
So large scale implementation across the city. I don't know if she'd be willing to come and say anything.
She probably would. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure she would.
Yeah.
And that it?
Yeah, there's more, but
Yes.
Kate went big, I went sort of small and low hanging fruit. I would love to see the businesses that it was applicable support more citywide composting, especially our restaurants and things. And to Kate's point, really just having a single-use plastic ban, plastic bags, plastic utensils, all of that kind of stuff. And I think there's true economic value in that, because I think if we could promote ourselves as a true eco municipality and start celebrating that we really are, you know, making change, I think that would attract a whole new level of tourism here, people who would be motivated to come to a city that's really doing that kind of stuff. So I think there could be value in that.
Steve?
Yeah, a couple things. Wes actually took, well, I was sort of on the same path as he was when he started about the power grid and getting renewables online. And I think we had this conversation a couple meetings ago about the Schiller plant. I brought that up, but it's all kind of ties into the same thing and sort of modernizing the grid. So I think my thought on that is for the EDC, like the energy transition should be an economic opportunity for the city. That's like, we want to lead in that. We want to bring businesses here that are pioneering that and leading that. Like, sometimes when I'm driving down the road, I see the things they're building around town and I just scratch my head, shake my head and I can't, like, do we really need another self-storage unit? That's like, that's what they're putting up. That's not forward thinking. That's not an economic development opportunity, really. Like, to bring something that's pioneering energy transition, bringing renewables onto the grid, modernizing the grid, bring stuff like that in the town. That's where the economic development is, not self-storage units. That's wasted opportunity. That's what I think.
Great.
I was also gonna bring up skip the staff. Christina Dubin came and talked to Eco about that. It was really interesting. And also plastic bag, maybe a ban or like incentives for stores to work away from those.
My idea was also. But Christina Dubin brought up the idea of going further past skip the stuff to where you would get a metal container with your takeout in it from one restaurant that bought into the skip the stuff idea. And then you could return that takeout container to any restaurant that was also participating in the idea, and then get it from another one, return it, and it would just be like a more sustainable way to get takeout from restaurants without bringing home containers that you probably won't use, or plastic and paper.
Returnable thing, great.
Think
Gosh,
getting their buy-in and help with both ordinances that are being drafted, whether it be the solar overlay district, so they could help promote that when it's up and running. Same thing with the EV charger ordinance, which is gonna start moving further along. So, if they're promoting local businesses, they should know where these things are anticipated to be allowed. And then with existing ordinances, things like the single-use plastic ban on city property, which may keep some restaurants from doing outdoor dining this upcoming summer if they don't comply with it.
thanks.
I have two. The first one is affordable housing. I just feel like we could use more assistance in pushing for affordable housing. And the other one is, I just feel like we're becoming a tourist town. I lived in Park City prior to moving here. And it just was, it was interesting because Park City turned into a tourist town twice a year, in the winter and in the summer. It was all tourism. And the tourists would never, residents we would never go into town in the summer or the winter. All residents stayed away from the old town. And I do that here in the summertime. In the middle of the summertime, I stay away from downtown. And so from an economic development point, I'm trying to say, I would like to see them attract more companies and couple that with affordable housing so that we were actually bringing new companies here, and that this is then a town that people want to work and live in and not just come to visit on the weekend or in the summertime for a week. Because I'm starting to feel a little bit like an outsider in my own town. And please don't take this as complaining, but I think we have an opportunity here to shift through economic development, to shift a little bit back more towards a higher percentage of companies that employ people, and people live here because they can afford to live here. Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, tourism is very sensitive to markets. So inflation really starts getting real. People start pulling back. One of the first things they give up is their vacations. To the extent that we're relying on tourism, we're very vulnerable to that shift in demand.
Yeah. One thing we had in
Um,
Park City.
And
was-
I love tourism. And I lived in Park City, well, I lived in Salt Lake, but
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in Park
In
City.
Park City, we had pillow tax. Which was great.
Yeah.
You know, we had all these people come in and invade our town. But at least we got their money locally. You know, we got their money through pillow tax. We don't even get that here.
No.
So who pays for upgrading the fire, police, streets, all the infrastructure, sewer, water? We pay. We're paying to have tourists come to our town. But I know, you know, nothing changes overnight, and we're all conscious and aware of this. And so over the next 5 or 10 years, we have opportunities to shape things a little bit, maybe differently.
I think, we actually
Thank
have-
you. I'm aware.
Sorry, we have Kristen Shaw, the health officer on Zoom, who just raised her hand.
Oh, my
But
gosh.
I forgot to put the thing down. I don't know, hopefully we can hear you.
Can you hear me, Kate?
Sorry, Kristen, we didn't really connect to the projector, but hopefully we can hear you through the computer.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
So while we're waiting for that to connect, how about just for time's sake, Josh, you
Did
wanna
that
give?
work?
Oh, wow.
We'll
Yep,
come
we can
back
hear
to
you.
her. Let's do solar HDC,
What, did she want to comment on the EDC?
Yeah,
if we can.
I did.
Oh,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Please go now.
Okay, just really quickly, my initial thought that came up, I'm sorry, am I yelling? I'm not trying to be too loud. I'd love to see the city look at additional options for vertical gardening. It can significantly help us reduce our energy consumption, fight the carbon emissions, helps us with urban heat issues, all things that we should be looking at, and something that I'm throwing my 2 cents into the ring for because I haven't heard that brought up yet. And I don't want to delay this any further, but I did want to just let the students know that when they're ready to reach out about the takeaway silverware project, don't forget to connect with the health department because we can get you connected with all the restaurants. Thank you. And happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Okay, so time wise, are we okay?
Yeah.
Pivoting to, solar.
I will be
HDC.
brief. So over the past decade, there have been more and more applications for solar panels in the HDC. There's requirements for solar panels in the ordinances everywhere in the city. They're just far more stringent in the HDC. And there was a very, I don't want to say high profile, but one was recently denied. It was on the front page of the paper. And the reasons why it was denied, I mean, there's two sides to every story, but looking at the ordinance with the city council representative on the HDC, Rich Blaylock, who said the HDC doesn't necessarily have to have solar panels in their purview. So if it was removed from their jurisdiction, then they wouldn't be making decisions denying solar panels based because the color is not right. So with that said, we mentioned our intent to bring forward that amendment to the ordinance at the meeting this past Monday. It got a lot of attention. 5 members of the HDC showed up to speak about it, about current requirements that they have. And the next steps, right now, the legal department's looking at whether we could actually pass an amendment removing HDC's jurisdiction over all solar panels, because there's some federal guidelines that come with being parts of a federal HDC. I might be getting this portion of it wrong. So they might not be allowed solar panels and portions of the HDC anyway. The other members of staff, primarily the planning department, might make other suggestions which may obtain the same objective. And there's talk of possibly doing a work session, whether it be HDC with the city council, HDC with the city council and the sustainability committee. There's different thoughts there. And there was a range of opinions on the councilors. Everyone spoke. The ones that come to mind, Councilor Bagley was in favor of removing this and going further and removing their ability to deny window upgrades, primarily because windows is a significant loss of heat. And why are you going to deny someone who wants to, seal their home, the ability to do that without having to hire an attorney and go in front of this board on several times? So there's a range of opinions, and right now it's just a discussion. And I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else to that. Steve?
Well, I'll start the conversation. I just like to offer my support on this effort. Just anecdotally, I often hear opinions on the HDC and they often trend the same way. So I think maybe a little bit of clarification on what they should and shouldn't be overseeing, it might be helpful going forward.
Okay. So I'm watching the clock here. We're good? Thank you. Great
That's all I have.
update. Okay, so Kate,
Get your emails.
walk us through what
Wait a
you
second.
propose for next year,
So
2024.
update the schedule for the third Thursday or fourth Thursday of every month. So our next meeting would be January 25th. So originally I had John Cardy in here, but I didn't realize that he will no longer be part of the committee starting next year, so I have a volunteer slot, but I basically kind of just took last year's schedule of who was doing what and tried to, make it in the same order. So the people who most recently did facilitating in minutes.
Is this the new list?
This is for
not the new-
2024.
So I think we
Sorry,
should,
this is 2024.
I
Yeah.
think we need to
This is
take
24.
the new list of members, committee members, and build a schedule based on the new list of members.
Okay. Well, it is pretty much the same. I guess I got to get rid of
Yeah.
Margot, but
Looks
Yeah.
like you don't have Bill Lyons in there.
Thank you.
So Bill Lyons,
Fish. Oh yeah,
he's
was.
officially on the committee.
It's a great point. Okay, so maybe I can
And-
switch Bill and Margot.
Yeah.
That makes life easier. Good
And then I
catch.
would just shift, don't have a volunteer slot, just let's shift everything up and just assign it to the members. And then if somebody
We'll just have
can't,
double up. or
if
something.
somebody can't fulfill a slot, just like we always do, we switch people around.
Sounds good. So, guess I'll just randomly throw in someone who maybe is,
Only thing I have to say is that Eco Club would be in June, which is after the school year's let out, which might be tricky for a recorder spot. But
oh, good
we
point.
could do that. We could do the volunteer spot in February.
Okay, so maybe I'll move you guys up. Get rid of this one.
Or even January.
You want to do
Somebody
the-
wanna,
The lead-in.
wanna
do the
be
facilitator?
facilitate? It's pretty straight. I mean, you saw, I didn't do anything tonight.
Yeah, I mean.
It's really easy.
You just read off. the agenda.
Just put the wrong agenda on the board. You start out with that.
Would both of us be able to tag team it?
Yes.
Okay,
And I'll be here to support you.
okay, yeah, we can, do- yeah.
And the key thing is just have fun with it. Yeah.
Yeah, then I'll just figure out the poor sucker has to do double duty.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And I think this is the third time.
Yeah.
I think I facilitated 3 times this year.
Yeah, I think
So
done quite a few. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Agreeing
Check
with
with
it.
Clearly you've
supervisors.
mastered
Did
it.
once.
Witness the agenda incident.
just it's a no-brainer thing. Okay, so we're a little bit over time. And I move to adjourn unless there's any other topics that we must.
Just do a quick close out for anybody.
We will
who
after
wants
we adjourn
yeah,
and
right.
stop the recording. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so anybody's, can I get,
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.